Actually, I wanted to ask about your best languages because you've learned 15 languages, but I know that well, obviously your Italian is you're a native Italian speaker. Your English is 100% good, native level pretty much. Same for French. And then what about the other languages? Let's say I'd like to explore like your top, let's say 7 languages.
Sure. So first of all, I would say I speak English well. I think I speak French well, but you reaching a native level, I don't think it's possible because speak being a native, it's a matter of identity first, and then I think that you can get close if you lived 30 years in the country and you lived every circumstance, like going to kindergarten or seeing your kids grow, etc., etc. I haven't had that in English. Um, just giving you a little bit of perspective, I might have a C2 in English, but I'm not native. C2 means I can speak at an academic level, I can express myself well, but there's always something that gives me away, whether it's, I mispronounce something or I formulate a sentence a native speaker will not, like the way a native speaker will not do, or I would say something that is not colloquial. Same thing for French, but I would say, by any stretch of the imagination, that I've reached the upper echelons of language learning, so to speak, for these languages, so that I can express myself well. It's always about communication. It's always about how good are you, how accurate are you in expressing, efficient are you in expressing your ideas. That's the very first thing. Apart from that, apart from, other than English and French, Spanish is, I think, up there. Most people think I'm Spanish because of my. I think the best language in terms of pronunciation is actually Spanish. It's not French and English. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. But it really wanted to sound like a Spanish probably back in the day. But I learned it after the so-called cutoff. There's a cutoff age, more or less 13, after which can't sound native, is what they say. But I don't believe in that.
Yeah,
I believe
we'll
it's
talk
more
about that. Yeah.
about it's more about your psychological attitude. I think Spanish is speaking rather well. I use it every single day, especially because my colleague is Spanish and I use it for work, with my life, with my friends, etc. I speak German well. I started learning German when I was 15. I think I've never lived in Germany, but I had a lot of friends. I had a German girlfriend from Berlin. Used to speak the language quite well. I read a lot of books and magazines in German, so I think I have a pretty high level in German as well. And then Russian and Polish, I would say these are the other languages I speak quite well because I used to a lot. I had a Russian girlfriend and a Polish girlfriend, and that really made a difference because when you get to know a girl or you have a partner, then you get to know their family, you get to know their friends. And I'm here in Krakow. I use over the last 8 years, I spent a lot of time in not only in Poland but with Polish people because where you live does not count as much as the time you spend. It's the amount of time you spend with native speakers and how you spend the time. So, had a Polish girlfriend for 8 years, speaking from the get-go just in Polish. And I'll tell you, this is an interesting story. And like from the get-go, it means that when I got to know her, my Polish was okay, maybe B1, not very good. And we had this date here in Krakow. And I still remember, as if it were today, that I sat down and they said, I was a little bit nervous. A date completely in Polish, in a language I did not master at all. And I said, hey, you want to speak English? And she looks at me and she says, nie, 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 mówisz bardzo dobrze po polsku. You speak so well in Polish. And she didn't give me a chance, like she really gave me no option, no other option. And then lead the entire conversation or the entire night that lasted, I don't know, 8 hours just in Polish. It was tragical and interesting. I would say 2 months. When I did not understand something, I used to change the subject, like, oh, the weather's nice, or the weather's bad today. So that was funny because sometimes I really was at a loss for words because I did not know words or did not understand what she was saying because she was completely oblivious to the fact that I not only was not a native speaker, but my Polish was not as good. And she only said, oh, your Polish is great. So I suffered, but really through that 3 month suffering, I learned very, very fast. Then I got to know her parents, and I got into these sometimes awkward situations where out of the blue, someone asks me a question point blank, and like I did not understand. But in Russian, I had the same. And I'm telling you all this because all these circumstances count when it comes to acquiring a language. Acquiring, not learning. It's real life, real people, real circumstances, conversations, dates, not understanding, going through the awkward moments of not understanding, or not being able to express yourself, trying to grasp at words, try to find a way to circumvent, oh, I can't say this, let me say it in a simplified way. All this counts when it comes to acquiring language at a really high level. And I would say these are the languages I use the most with native speakers: English, well, Italian, English, French, Spanish, German, Polish, and Russian. Portuguese is a strange example because it's very similar to Italian, but Spanish, somehow speaking Spanish well helps me with Portuguese on the one hand, but also makes it difficult. I was at this polyglot gathering in Prague, and I say seguro, which means for sure. But the guy, Piotr, the Polish guy he's been living in Portugal for 8 years, says, no, you don't say seguro, you say concertare, I think. So he corrected me and said, no, you're using a Spanish word. And this happens quite a lot. But I can say that I speak Portuguese fluently and I understand it very well. Not perfectly, because sometimes I speak Portuñol, but no matter how many Spanish words I put into my Portuguese, people understand me perfectly. So that's another language I would say I speak well, speak fluently. Fluency is not about perfection, it's about communication, as I always say. And then there's, Greek. Greek, it's a language I've been learning for 5 years. I'm really passionate about Greek. I think I got into like a B2 more or less. I'm able to not only hold conversations, very, very long conversations. Recently, I had the Easy Greek team come to Rome and I did some podcasts. So let's say 10 languages, I speak them well. You have to delve into what it means to speak a language well. I can communicate comfortably. And that's the most important thing for me. Then we can quibble about the nuances, whether what it means to speak a language well, but I will say I speak 10 languages comfortably.
Nice. But I want to talk about, like, with so many languages, and it's not like you're doing this full time. It's not your main thing. Like, you're doing stuff in life. How do you, it's not even like the question of how do you get better. It's like, how do you even maintain as many languages?
I would say that as a polyglot, multilingual person speaks, a person who has acquired many languages, the problem is not learning anymore. The problem is maintaining. The more languages you have under your belt, the more difficult it becomes to maintain languages, because languages take a lot of your time, a lot of your energy, and a lot of concentration. Now, here's the interesting part. When you get to a B2 level, so when you get to a level where you can comfortably speak the language, let's say in my case, Greek, for example, you can design ways in which you can use the language, if you can, create the life circumstances that allow, and the habits that allow you to maintain those languages. In my specific case, this is what I do. I distinguish a micro environment, my apartment, and the macro environment, that is the life that happens outside the apartment. So when it comes to the apartment, let's say I have habits that connect places, times, and activities, and languages. What do I mean by that? Let me give you a very concrete example. In the kitchen, lunch, around 1 or 2, when I have lunch, I cook. So I prepare my lunch. I eat my lunch, and then I wash the dishes by listening to the news in French or Russian. So this is a habit. I don't have to think about it. It's either Russian, French, and very often Polish. I watch YouTube videos in Polish. For those, the Poles who listen, usually not Polish is a very fine guy. So I got into the habit of listening to these 3 languages basically on a weekly basis. I either do Russian or French or Polish. When I go to the bathroom, if I'm taking a shower and I'm not washing my hair, in the morning after my morning workout, I listen to a podcast, often in Polish, about personal growth and mindset, etc., etc. And also in the bathroom, I normally read magazines in German. So that's also another habit that I do. It's like reading magazines in German. And then I read at night. A lot of time reading, especially at night, couple hours, geopolitics or history or astronomy. These are my biggest passions. And I read them in other languages. So without even thinking about it anymore, I expose myself to either the written language or the spoken language in at least 6 languages on a weekly basis. Then you have work. I have colleagues with whom I speak constantly in English, Italian, Spanish, and or French. So these are 4 other languages that I speak. at work. And then this is only the microenvironment. Then I currently live, and I've been living with a bunch of people, like with my ex-girlfriend, who was speaking just Polish at home. So imagine speaking Polish the whole day at home. And now I live with a guy, a Greek guy, speak Greek together, and another guy who speaks 8 languages. And we speak, for example, Swedish. Well, we can play chess, and we haven't played chess that much because he just moved in, but we can speak Swedish or other languages. So, and on top of that, I go out with my friends, multilingual group, and I get to speak only just staying in Rome. This is not even considering traveling. When I travel abroad and I go to these multilingual events, you speak a bunch of languages. Just to give an idea, I've designed my life so that I don't have to think too much about maintaining, meaning, oh, I got to do 15 minutes of this, 15 minutes I just live through the languages. Instead of watching a show in Italian, I just watch it in another language. So instead of reading a magazine in Italian, I read it in German. Instead of having a conversation in Italian at breakfast, I have it in Swedish with a person I'm living with. And if I did not do that, it would be pretty much impossible to maintain languages. You have to design a life where the consequence is that you're going to use these languages, because if you're thinking, you deliberately have to sit down and learn. Good luck with that. So I always say, if you have the possibilities, of course, if you live in the middle of nowhere in Arizona or in Australia, it's more complicated to speak these languages with your friends outside of your place. But with the internet, you can do pretty much whatever you want inside the microenvironment. So that's how you know, able to maintain languages and also learn new ones. I always distinguish System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the languages that you speak really well and you're using. This is what I just discussed. The System 2 is the languages, the new languages. In my case, it's Turkish, for example, right now. The new languages. I always like comparing language learning with, I always use this, resort to this family paradox. Every single time that you learn a new language, a newborn joins the family. And the newborn needs much more attention than the other ones. You have the teenager that is about to leave the family, that is like B2. Then you have the adult that left the family, then you have C1, English or French. These are languages that are independent. And then you have the newborn, or like the teenagers that need more attention. So you have to figure out a family dynamic so you can take care of everybody considering your priorities and circumstances. So first thing in the morning, at 6 o'clock after workout, I do Turkish because I need concentration. But then the other languages, the more you speak a language well, the less concentration and energy you need, because your brain is able to automatically speak it. You've surely noticed, and the people who are listening to us, is that when you start learning a foreign language, it takes a lot of energy. You're tired after a 5-minute conversation. This is because when you're not skilled enough, the linguistic infrastructure is not in place yet, you're heavily leveraging your whole prefrontal cortex, which is this part of the brain. When you have acquired a language or any skill and you do it automatically, this process migrates to what is called basic ganglia. The basic ganglia is the part of the brain that handles automatic, procedural memory. So you don't make any effort anymore. That's the reason why when you speak your native language, you don't think about it. You make no effort because it's being processed by a completely different part of the brain. My advice is get to that level where your basal ganglia, not basic, but basal ganglia are, handling a language learning, and you will be able to learn more and more languages. And of course, maintaining languages, then you have to design a life that supports that.